you should immediately stop using width, height, top, left, bottom, and right values in your CSS. And I don't mean just that particular properties, I actually mean any property that contains any one of those keywords, like margin top, padding bottom, text align left, and so on and so on. What should you use instead? CSS Logical Properties, supported in all modern browsers today. In this video, I'll explain exactly why, and I'll show you on a practical example how CSS Logical Properties work. Let's dive in. What exactly is the problem with using values top, left, bottom, right, width, and height? Well, it might not be apparent immediately, especially if you're used to working in a single writing mode, but if you're working on a website or an app that is offered in multiple languages, and some of those languages are maybe in a direction left to right, while others might be right to left, the problem might become more than apparent. To demonstrate how exactly this works and why it's important to switch to logical properties, I created this really simple demo on CodePen. Link is going to be in the description. And we're actually going to rework this demo to use logical properties and to demonstrate problems logical properties help solving. We're going to be switching this document from left to right to left. And we're going to do this by setting the root element to direction right to left. And here you see that our content is now flowing from right to left. And I think that right here, only one problem might be obvious, and this is going to be the lack of space between our avatar and our text here, because if we comment this out again, you're going to see that there is a space here, but once we change our direction to right to left, this will become a problem in this particular area. And to make those problems even more apparent, I'm actually going to comment out this direction for a moment, and I will remove the padding on our content element, which is going to be this one. And once I comment this out, I'm just going to add padding left, because I want to have space between this left edge and the start of the text. We're going to set padding left to 4 rems, and there we go. And now we're going to switch back our direction to right to left, and I'm just going to add a selector here so we don't have to constantly scroll up and down. Root element is going to have direction right to left. And now you see that we actually have padding here on the left side. So if you were to switch your app in this particular case from left to right to left, then you would also have to change your CSS and actually tweak this padding to be padding right. This is what we actually want in this example. We want to have a space between the edge of the element and the start of the text, and the start of the text in the right to left languages is on the right side. So if we're switching to logical properties, instead of left and right, top and bottom, we are going to be thinking about block, inline, start, and end. And let's just slowly go into those. First, key concepts are block and inline. Inline dimension is the dimension along which text in the current writing mode actually runs. In English, this is going to be left to right. In other languages, this might be right to left or top to bottom. If we were to switch this padding left to padding inline, this would actually mean that we are going to have space on our inline dimension. Let's just start with that. So padding inline. And as you see, this padding inline now actually specifies the space on both sides of our horizontal dimension. But if we want to specify only one side, we're going to use keywords start and end. Start is going to be the direction in which the text starts. So in left to right languages, this is going to be left. And in right to left languages, this is going to be right. And end is going to be the opposite. So let's try this. So if we want to set padding between the start of an element and the actual start of text, then we're going to set padding inline start to value that we want, 4 rems in this particular case. And as you can see right here, we actually have space right here as we wanted. And now if we switch the direction of our document to left to right, you're going to see that our padding is now specified exactly in the place where we want, between the edge of an element right here and the start of the text, which is going to be here on the left side. And then we have a second dimension. A second dimension is going to be block. And this is going to replace top and bottom in left to right writing modes. So let's set padding top to 4 rems as well. And as you see, this is set right here between the top edge of an element and the start of an actual text. But if we switch our writing mode to vertical, this might become a problem. So let's try doing this. We're going to set the writing mode to vertical, right to left. And now this actually created a whole slew of other problems, and we are going to get into all of those immediately. But what I actually want you to focus on is this particular area that we tweaked, padding top in our English writing mode. But if we switch our writing mode to vertical, this should be right. So padding top is not going to make sense here. We actually want to have padding right here. And as you can see, you would again have to specify multiple selectors for different languages that your app supports. So if you support horizontal writing mode and a vertical writing mode, you would have to use 2 different selectors and tweak that particular values, which, as you can immediately probably see, can cause a lot of problems later on in development. If you're tweaking some of those values, you're going to have to constantly think about adjusting all of the writing modes separately. In any case, if we switch this to padding block, you're going to see that now we have space both on our, well, in this particular layout, left and right side. And if we comment our writing mode vertical, you're going to see that our padding here corresponds to top and bottom. And again, as is the case with the inline, we are going to be thinking about block, start, and end. And start is going to be in English at the top, and in different direction of languages is going to be maybe at the bottom. This probably sounds very complicated if you're first time thinking about logical properties, but as you start using them, it will just click and you won't have any problems with dealing with those. So try to stick with those and try using those kind of properties, and you will immediately see how they work, and you'll find that you're gonna be able to really quickly switch your mental model. In any case, now we have padding block set to 4 ends, which means we're going to have top and bottom here. And in a different writing mode, this might actually mean left and right. When vertical, this is going to mean this padding here and this padding here. I'm going to comment to the writing mode again. And if we wanted to set only the initial block padding, we're going to use again the keyword start. And this is going to set only this padding right here at the top. Let me just comment this out so it doesn't confuse us. Now we have only this particular space here between the top of the element and the top of the text. And in our different writing mode, vertical, we are going to actually have this exactly where we want it. So until now, what I wanted to show is that we are just going to switch our mental model from thinking about top, bottom, left, and right to actually start thinking about inline, block, start, and end. And those are going to correspond to different things in different writing modes. Sounds complicated, but it's really not. Inline is going to mean the direction in which the text flows, and block is going to be the opposite of that. Same thing for the start and end. Start is going to mean the point at which the text actually starts, and end is going to be the point where the text ends. Now let's comment this out, and let's just see in our initial state what is actually the problem with this design if we're using right to left direction. And this is going to be the lack of space between our avatar image and our actual author name, which is going to be my name in this particular case, or a number. So let's just see how can we fix that. We're going to find this particular image element in CSS, and it's going to be here. And as you see, we have here specified margin right 1 rem. What we actually want to have in this case is margin-inline-end. This is going to work as you expected. And if we actually switch our writing mode to left to right, you're going to see that this is still working as expected, because in this particular case now, we are setting the inline dimension of the margin, which is going to be the horizontal in this case, and the end point of that dimension, which is going to be at this particular edge of the image. But if we switch our writing mode to right to left, this is then going to be reversed. And this will actually mean that this is the starting point of our inline dimension, and this is the ending point. So this is the edge from where we will set our margin. And we actually fixed the first problem we had in our CSS, or actually the only problem that is visible when we set the direction of our element from left to right to left. And now let's see what the problems are if we switch from horizontal writing mode to vertical one. So let's set our writing mode to vertical right to left. First problems that we are going to notice in our CSS and in our design here are going to be margin and padding set on the body tag. The idea behind margin here is to actually have this element centered within the page on the writing mode axis, or this is going to be the inline dimension. And we also want to have padding left and right, or again, the inline padding set to 2 rems, because if the screen is too small, we actually want to have a little bit of space between this edge here and this edge here in the vertical writing mode, and in the horizontal, we will want to have this space right here and right here, as you would probably expect by using padding left and right. So let's switch our padding left to inline start and padding right to inline end. And now this still doesn't appear to be working well because we have other problems, but you see with the scroll bar here that we are actually getting space here and space here. And if we switch our writing mode again to horizontal, we're going to have to comment out maximal weight on our content elements. And as we don't have enough content in this element to spread the entirety of the page, we're just going to set width to 100%. And now you can see that we actually have space right here. But if we comment out our padding inline start and padding inline end, you're going to see that this space disappears. Of course, the same thing for our writing mode. If we uncomment this padding inline start and end, you're going to see that space appears here and here. Well, this still looks very weird because we have other problems, but we're going to get to those immediately. So let's return our maximum width to 30 rems on our content element. Here, as you see, we're setting maximum width, which is going to be this dimension, while we actually want to set the maximum width for the direction where the text flows, which is going to be the inline direction. As is the case with the margin and padding, with the inline start, inline end, block start, block end, a similar thing is going to happen with width and height. So width is going to become inline size and height is going to become block size. And of course, this is going to work with the max and min values as well. So we can set this maximum width to max inline size. And this in our left to right writing modes is going to define width of an element. And in top to bottom writing mode, this is actually going to define height of an element. So it's actually going to work logically as our text flows. So let's switch maximum width to maximum inline size. And you see here that we are actually getting what we expected. And we're just going to remove this with 100% that we added a bit earlier. Let's comment out our writing mode really quickly to see if we are getting what we expected. And we are. This is centered exactly as it should be. And in our vertical writing mode, we have problem on our body because this right here would be equivalent of setting margin top 0, margin bottom 0, margin left auto, and margin right auto. So this should actually be margin inline auto, margin block 0. Because margin inline is shorthand for margin inline start and margin inline end, while the margin block is the shorthand for margin block start and margin block end. So let's switch this. We're going to do margin inline auto and margin block 0. And now this actually is centered. We still have a lot of problems in this code, but this is exactly where we wanted it to be. And if we comment out our vertical writing mode, you're going to see that this is centered in this direction of the document too. And this padding can stay as is because we're actually setting all sides of our element to exactly the same value. So this is going to work as expected regardless of the direction of our document. So let me comment this out. Next thing that I want to check is actually our body tag. And as you see here, we have defined a minimum height of 100% viewport height. We actually want to set this to 100% of the screen real estate. And to do that, we will have to switch minimum height to minimum block size. And this is now looking a little bit better, but as you see, we still have a problem. And the problem is that viewport height is actually also a physical dimension of our viewport. So it's always going to be viewport height, which is going to be this dimension right here, and not this dimension or cross dimension as we have in our vertical writing mode. And luckily, there are also logical viewport units, and those are going to be viewport inline and viewport block, as you would expect. So instead of viewport height, you can use viewport block. Or if you want to deal with the viewport width, you're going to use viewport inline. So in this particular case, we want viewport block. As you can see, our background now stretches exactly as it should entirety of our page. While if we switch our writing mode to horizontal again, you're going to see that body is exactly as it should be, 100% of the viewport size. And as we're looking at this code right here, you see that we are dealing with the Flexbox and we're setting align items to center. But this also, of course, works with the different keywords, and those keywords are going to be flex start and flex end. Flexbox is already using this logical model. So Flexbox positioning is not set with the left and right keywords, but actually with the keywords start and stop, which is going to correspond exactly to the logical properties that we're switching the rest of our content here. And just to demonstrate this, let's see flex end, for example. And this should, in this case, be at the bottom of our screen. Or if we set our writing mode to vertical, you're going to see that this is again right here at the end of our cross axis, or at the end opposite from our writing mode, because writing mode is going to be top to bottom here, and the opposite is going to be right to left here, and this is going to then be end. Let's return this to center. And now this pretty much looks okay, and let's just see really quickly if there are some other problems that we have. Here on our heading and p tags, we have again set margin top and margin bottom, and that's not what we actually want. So we're going to switch those, and as you already know by now, margin top is going to be the cross axis, so we're going to be dealing with the margin block, and margin block start is going to be 0, and margin block end is going to be 1 rem. And if you look really closely now, you're going to see that we still have a problem here because there is some kind of a space right here. And this is actually going to be related to the default settings of the browser, because H1 element by default has set margin top and margin bottom to some value that is not 0. So we will also have to reset this particular values here, margin inline, and I'm just going to set margin-inline-start and end to 0 immediately. And as you see, now this looks as expected. And of course, if we switch to horizontal writing mode, you're going to see that this also works as expected. It's exactly where it should be. And the same problem is on our paragraph. Again, we are setting top and bottom while we actually want to set margin left and right. Margin top is going to be margin block start, and margin bottom is going to be margin block end. And we also probably want to set margin inline to 0, just in case we don't pick up some unwanted value for margin top and margin bottom when our document is in the vertical writing mode. Margin inline is going to be 0. And another problem we have here is going to be vertical align middle, because we actually don't want to align this vertically. We actually want to align this on the cross axis, or in our case, this is going to be the block axis. But as far as my understanding goes, this is still not available, or there is no alternative to vertical align in this particular case. So we will have to rewrite this to avoid the issue, because as you see right now, this should be centered with our image on this axis here. The simplest way I can think of to actually fix this problem is to use Flexbox in this particular case. So we will use Flexbox on our parent element of those two items, and actually our parent container for our image and text is going to be anchor element, and we're going to change anchor links within the paragraphs to display flex. And now this is looking much better already. Let's see how we can position this. And this is going to be cross-axis on Flexbox, as is the case with the logical properties, which means that we're going to be dealing with the align property. So this is going to be centered properly, of course. And if we try to see how this looks in our vertical writing mode, you're going to see that this is also exactly where it should be at the center of our cross axis. And while we're talking about images, you're going to see here that we have set width and height on our image. But the deal with the images is that they're not actually switched when you're changing document direction. As you can see exactly here, image is still facing exactly the same way. So using width and height in this particular example is going to be okay. At least that's what I think. If you have a better understanding of this, please let me know in the comments and correct my wrong assumption. And this of course goes for everything that I say here on this channel. If you ever find me wrong about something, please correct me. I would love to learn more if you have better understanding of something. Thank you so much if you do. So our image here is going to be all right, but this component looks weird in this particular case because we don't actually have text that will be flowing from top to bottom like we should have if we're using the vertical writing mode. And lastly, we want to fix the problems on our link element. And problems here, as we mentioned, are that we're setting padding top, bottom, left, and right. So we're going to switch padding top and padding bottom to padding block start and padding block end, because otherwise spacing on our button becomes strange or reversed. We actually want to have this amount of padding on the direction where the text flows. So padding left and right will be replaced with the padding inline, and padding right we don't need because padding inline is going to be the shorthand for padding inline start and padding inline end. Now this looks much better, and if we switch again to our horizontal writing mode, you're going to see that this also looks exactly as it should. And for this particular component, we're pretty much done. But there is another thing that I actually want to show you, and that would be how to use top, left, right, and bottom properties when you're using the position absolute, for example. And for that particular case, let's just switch to horizontal writing mode right now. And we're going to change our image here, and we're going to position it right on this edge of the element just to see how this actually works. So we're going to set this to position absolute, and we're going to set the top to 1 rem and right to 1 rem. This is how you would do this if you're not using logical properties. And now our image is exactly here. We actually want to set right to 0 apparently. And also let's just increase the size of this image a little bit so we can see it better. Right, here it is. And now, as you already know, this is actually positioned not at the top right, but it's actually positioned at the end of our inline axis where the text flows. And it's also positioned at the start of our cross axis or at the block start right here. We're going to uncomment writing mode. And as you can see, we have this image right here while we actually want it to be right here. So as you can already understand by now, top here is going to correspond to block start, and the right should correspond to inline-end. But for top and right properties, we're going to have to use inset-block or inset-inline. So top will become inset-block-start, and right will become inset-inline-end. And now this is positioned exactly where it should be. And if we switch our writing mode to horizontal again, you're going to see that this is again exactly as it should be, right in the corner where we placed it. So when you're dealing with the top, left, right, and bottom properties, you're going to want to prefix those with the inset keyword. So you're going to be dealing with the inset-block-start, which is going to correspond to top, inset-block-end, which is going to correspond to bottom, inset-inline-start, which is going to correspond to left, and inset-inline-end, which is going to correspond to right. And of course, when I'm talking about corresponding values here, I'm thinking about how it corresponds to left to right writing mode. Of course, I didn't cover all properties in this particular video. There are others that you should probably know about, like text align and overflow properties. If you're using text align, you should be using start and end again, and not left and right, as you would expect. And regarding the overflow property, we've been dealing with the overflow X and overflow Y, but now this is going to be switched to overflow inline and overflow block, as you would expect based on the knowledge that we've gained until now. There are also some other properties, like we've mentioned, that don't actually have the logical equivalent, like we've been talking about the vertical align, but there's also one property that can be problematic in particular, and that would be background position. And Ahmad Shadid actually did a fantastic article on logical properties in general, and he outlined this particular problem, because at the moment we don't have the equivalent for background position in a logical way, so you're going to have to use top, left, bottom, and right in that particular property. And hopefully this will be implemented in browser soon, so we're going to be able to use logical values in background position as well. And I hope that this gives you an idea how logical properties work, and more importantly, why you should start using them. Using logical properties is not going to future-proof your CSS or make it much easier for you to switch to a different writing mode if you want to support multiple languages on your app or a website, but also newer properties like Flexbox and Grid. We've touched a little bit Flexbox in this video, but Flexbox and Grid are already switched to this logical model, so you're dealing with the start and end values and not top and bottom, left and right. And in this particular case, your CSS even might look a little bit more consistent. What do you think about this? Have you already used logical properties, or will you start using them? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for your attention. My name is Zoran Yambor. I will see and hear you in the next dimension, horizontally or vertically, or rather in the next video.